Hello everybody, Retro Martin here, and welcome to my video on Sega's Lightgun games for the Nintendo Wii. I'm going to go through, nattering about the various Lightgun games that Sega have released for the platform, and why you, as a Sega or Lightgun fan, should go out and buy them, or play them if you haven't really got round to it. So let's dive in and start shooting.
Choose your weapon. Yep.
Presented by Retro Martin, more like, but I guess Sega get credit as our first game is Ghost Squad. Now this was originally released in arcades in 2004 and came home to the Wii with additional content in 2007. This game ran on the Sega Chihiro board, which was based on Xbox architecture and was the same board used in games like Virtua Cop 3, House of the Dead 3 and Outrun 2. Now a couple of those games will be mentioned again later in the video. The game starts off with a very funky how-to-play sequence, which shows the depth of the game, such as multiple selecting modes for your gun, and also the action sequences and how to control them as they come up. So it's not just shooting enemies and avoiding shooting any hostages. Otherwise, the game takes on a standard light gun fare. In the vein of Virtua Cop, you'll go through the levels on rails and shoot any enemies you come into contact with. The enemy about to hurt you will get a red reticule around them, meaning you should prioritise them, but otherwise you make your way through the 3 stages and try not to shoot any hostages, which the enemies will use as human shields, and take part in the action sequences as and when they come up. Now these action sequences are peppered throughout and take on things such as disarming bombs, handcuffing hostages, sniping enemies, and knife fights of all things. And there's even more besides that. Even better still is the 3 stages aren't all there is. As you complete levels, you unlock new variations of them, which take different routes or are set at different times of day. Considering the multiple routes given to you throughout each level as it is, this creates incredible replay value for the game. The more bolder view can also turn off the targeting reticule to gain even more points. Different weapons provide a new way to play as well, making some parts harder and some easier. One such is the shotgun, which is great for clearing enemies, but absolutely rubbish for saving hostages. Another is a rifle, which has piercing ability and is great for ensuring you don't shoot hostages or mines, but due to how slow it isn't great for clearing out the terrorists. The end of each level tallies your points and shows which route you took to complete, including your successes and failures, the latter of which don't always prevent completion. A percentage is given which shows how much of that stage you've gone through on your journey to completion. As if that wasn't enough for you to get your teeth into, there's also a party mode which gives you access to 2 further ways of playing. Paradise mode, where everyone's dressed up in swimsuits and your character shoots water guns which have a very odd firing angle, and ninja mode, which replaces everything with Japanese related figures such as samurai and kunoichi, and has you shooting infinite ammo shurikens at everything, and your character dressed as a ninja. But it all adds up to a lot of fun ways to play the game. And the fun doesn't end there, as customization allows for costume changes and the aforementioned different weapons, the former of which has an unlockable Virtua Cop 3 costume for our hero. Does this mean that Ghost Squad potentially started out as Virtua Cop 4? I don't know, but it can at least be considered that it might have been a spiritual sequel of sorts. The Virtua Cop references don't end there either. Rage and Smarty, the 2 original main characters from Virtua Cop, also show up in the leaderboard. Sadly, no sign of Janet, but she did get into Fighters Megamix on the Saturn instead of Rage and Smarty, so it kind of balances out, to be fair. All of the aforementioned taken together, added to the fun shooting action and an incredible 4 players for the Wii, means that this is a game you can bring out again and again and never get tired of what's on offer. This is a true gem of a light gun game by Sega, and is also incredibly cheap to pick up. My copy cost me just £3 in the UK, so it shouldn't be too hard for you to find and play, and it is one that you will roll out again, just to have fun with your friends. Next up is a compilation of ports put together for us to have fun with. I am of course talking about Sega's iconic House of the Dead 2 from the Dreamcast and House of the Dead 3 for the Xbox. First up is House of the Dead 2, originally released in arcades in 1998 and then ported to the Dreamcast in 1999. This game ran on the Sega Naomi board, like a few other games that ended up with the Dreamcast ports. The game itself gives you the same original and arcade modes. Original mode still has the additional options, like more credits and bullets, that you can select prior to playing, so nothing has changed there. Otherwise, the game is no different, with its very low budget voice acting, which is great fun to listen to, and its great shooting action. You, or with a friend if you want, Make your way through several levels, shooting enemies and trying not to take hits with a limited amount of health and lives. However, I feel the Dreamcast had the better time with aiming, as I find it quite hard to get shots off on the Wii, even with the targeting reticule turned on for the Lightgun. However, the action is all there, with its multiple routes based on saving hostages, or not, or shooting random items such as keys to unlock a different route. Those that have never played it before will find the game very action-packed with plenty to shoot. Even environmental furniture such as barrels, lights, signs etc. will yield up items which can then be used in original mode, like the aforementioned extra credits, different costumes and a whole assortment more. There's also a boss rush mode, which allows you to fight any of the bosses in the game individually if you so wish. The bosses themselves are big and bold, with the game telling you the weak points prior to fighting, and then you have to try and beat them with this knowledge. They are solidly made, with one having a very weak heart but an impenetrable chest that only opens up periodically, to fighting what is quite literally a Hydra and having to shoot each head with a small tail prior to its attacking before the action then switches to this one head crawling around like a snake, and again you having a very limited time to shoot it as it's about to attack. The game itself still looks great with the Dreamcast's clean and vibrant visuals, looking stunning on the Wii, and you have plenty of things to shoot, making this one hell of a game to try. And it doesn't end there, as we move on to House of the Dead 3, originally released for the Xbox in 2002, and in the arcade running on the Chihiro board 2 months later, this rounds out the double pack nicely. The shooting translates nicer on the Wii as well. Instead of the handguns used in House of the Dead 2, the shotguns used here pack a much more varied punch due to the slightly wider angle of shot, meaning that the slight inaccuracy that's present in House of the Dead 2 for the Wii doesn't seem to be here for House of the Dead 3. There are again multiple routes through the levels, though I think that the visuals are slightly muddier and they don't look quite as nice as the Dreamcasts did for the House of the Dead 2. But otherwise it's the same as the other game, with items to be found and enemies to kill. One nice new addition for the game is short scenes where the other character is being attacked and you have a short time to save them. Failure does not result in any major penalty, but winning does net you extra health, so it's good to try and beat these as often as possible. Other additions include time attack mode, where you have no health but you have to beat the timer instead. There's also a melee attack that can be used to block blows. Like the second game, the bosses are similar, with most of them having a smaller bar underneath their health that you need to deplete by shooting the weak point repeatedly, and them losing health if you manage to do so, or you take a hit if you don't. I feel it acts a bit like a timer for getting the shots in prior to being hit, but otherwise it makes no major difference as they're all quite scripted events per se. The bosses in this one don't have the same appeal as their immediate prequel ones, but are otherwise still an interesting bunch, with a giant oversized security guard with a club chasing you around, to a giant sloth in a cage that will rain bodies on you occasionally. Plenty of cutscenes of the action pepper the rest of the game. Otherwise, what you have here are two solid ports of two incredible shooters, and whilst there are no real extras, this is a really cheap pickup for the Wii still, so it's definitely worth adding to your collection, and both games are absolutely amazing to play through, especially with a second player. As if you weren't already hitting buy it now on a copy of the last game from some online store, another House of the Dead rears its head, with House of the Dead Overkill. Now this was created specifically for the Wii by Headstrong Games under license from Sega, way back in 2009. A sensation on its release, this one acts as an alternate universe prequel, chronicling the adventures of G, a main character across the franchise, and the foul-mouthed Isaac Washington, who in absolutely no way, shape or form is an attempt at making a character of Samuel L. Jackson. One of the main draws of the game is the grindcore B-movie horror aesthetic the game takes on. Graphically, it tries to look like an old reel of film, and the music and stage intros absolutely buy into this as much as possible. Lovers of the humble mellotron will be right at home here, as it's used quite prominently in several of the songs. Purposefully badly acted voices and an extreme amount of banter round out the aesthetic, and we haven't even got onto the gameplay itself yet. Largely the action remains the same, with you, or a second player with you, making your way through levels, dispatching enemies and fighting a boss at the end, with, like the other games in the franchise, the weak points purposefully pointed out to you, but being quite hard to shoot at all the same due to movement and aiming. This game differs a bit from the preceding House of the Dead games by giving you a fair few more bullets in a magazine for your gun, meaning a little less room for error, and being even more arcadey, so shots will be ringing out left, right and centre. Hostage rescuing makes up the rest of the core gameplay. Additions including little golden brains littered throughout to unlock things, and green icons that initiate slowdown, which can be fun, but sometimes annoying when you've killed everything and have to wait for the scene to progress in slow motion until it wears off, make up some of the other items that you can shoot as you go through. There are plenty of unlockables, with music, videos, character models and minigames all in there, and there's a shop to spend your hard-earned cash on new weapons and upgrades. Like Ghost Squad, the different weapons really change up the game, with things like the submachine gun making it much more difficult due to not packing much of a punch, but enabling you to shoot like crazy across the screen, to the more powerful things like the shotgun and assault rifle. There's even a hand cannon, the latter of which was the inspiration for the huge Magnum Wii Lightgun I picked up at the start of the video. It certainly helped immerse me in the action, even if the weight and heft of it make it hard to use over long periods, but it just looks so much cooler than the kiddie Wii Zapper. The game also gives you an extra enemies mode, director's cuts of the levels, and more importantly for those of you who have more than one Wiimote, a twin gun mode, where unlike having two players, this one allows one player to use two guns and changes the game accordingly, making some of the guns, like the submachine gun, shine so much more. Now, if only Sega would port House of the Dead Scarlet Dawn and give us that MP7 as a peripheral for current consoles, and I would be laughing. This game is the full package. Varied levels, incredibly tight gunplay, fun music, great dialogue and aesthetic, and plenty to unlock. It would go on to get an even more content-heavy release for the PlayStation 3, but we aren't here to talk about that one. This game is absolutely worth owning in your collection, and has so much replay value. I was even able to rope my wife in to play it quite a fair bit back in the day. I did get a lot of use out of my two Wiimotes. Headstrong Games and Sega delivered a blinder with this one, so you owe it to yourself to play it as a Sega fan. Now we move on to the finale of our list of Sega Lightgun games, another double pack that was released in 2010 without much fanfare or advertising. This is of course Gunblade NY and LA Machine Guns, the arcade pack. Now the Wii release uses one profile for both games, and it has some additional weapon unlocks for both as an extra, though these aren't all that game changing, so you won't be in a rush to unlock them. Otherwise, it's just like House of the Dead 2 and 3 Returns, with it just being some solid ports on offer, though as of 2023, this remains the only time they've come home. Gunblade NY itself is a 1995 Sega Model 2 release, which was the same arcade board used for games such as Sega Rally, House of the Dead, Virtua Cop, Dead or Alive and many others. So at the time, this would have felt right at home on the Sega Saturn, though this wasn't to be. The game itself follows a terrorist attack of New York, with you following a few stages full of on-rail shooting action. You can select from easy mode or hard mode, with there being 4 stages on each, so there's plenty to be getting on with. There's no ducking, dodging, dipping or diving here. You shoot, and you shoot fast and accurate. If a missile or rocket comes your way, you better shoot it first or you'll take a hit. The bosses are big, with plenty of things to be shooting at while you're trying to fight them. There isn't much more I can say about the game, other than it's fast, frantic and good fun. It has colourful visuals and plays very fluidly. The only downside is the gun doesn't feel like it does a lot. It's quite weak and you'll take a lot of shots to destroy even the most basic of robots. However, this is a great game for beginners, as you have infinite credits to complete the game with, so there's no fear of dying as you learn to play the game. It also offers up to 2 players to have fun with. The only minor alteration is that the World Trade Centers have been removed. Despite the fact the game came out in 1995, it is set in 2005, so out of respect, Sega have removed them. Otherwise, what you have is a fun shooting game that barely lets up. We now move on to one of my favourite light gun games of all time, LA Machine Gun's Rage of the Machines. Now I actually played this on the proper arcade cabinet on a pier in Llandudno, which is in Wales for those wondering, whilst I was on a geography school field trip back in the year 2000. Now whilst the Wii release doesn't have the vibrating footplate and the huge guns, it doesn't miss out on any of the game itself. This was originally a 1998 Sega Model 3 game, which is again the same board used by games such as Scud Race, Fighting Vipers 2, Star Wars Trilogy Arcade and some others, so this could have been ported relatively handily to the Sega Dreamcast at the time. The premise is largely the same as Gunblade NY. A terrorist attack on New York prompts our heroes to take to the skies, this time on a hover platform instead of a helicopter, and blast as many robots as they can. LA Machine Guns feels a little more weighty than Gunblade NY. The shots feel like they hit better and are actually doing more, and the rebound noise isn't as basic, so you feel like your shots are really doing something, unlike Gunblade NY. There are plenty of hostages around as well, which offer a hefty point penalty when accidentally shot. But otherwise it's largely the same as Gunblade NY, with you having 4 stages to blast through, which unlocks a 5th stage encompassing a huge boss fight when you've completed the previous 4. The bosses themselves seem to have more character and more things to shoot than Gunblade NY as well, with a multiple machine tank in Las Vegas, a huge rotor-winged aircraft in the first stage, and there's even a robot skimming around the ocean in another which will remind you of other mech games, like Armored Core or Bulk Slash. particularly the latter with the vibrant Sega visuals. So yes, while terrorists attack New York, you will be going all around America to fight. The other thing that makes this game so cool is all the Sega references. Whilst blasting about recording this, I noticed an advert for Sega's Top Skater arcade game, and when I originally played it, I noticed an advert for Sonic Adventure. Some of these references were changed for the Wii, with the latter Sonic Adventure advert I saw instead in its place a Sonic and the Black Knight advert, which was also a Wii game, so it makes it relevant. So for all the Sega fans, it's worth playing through just to spot the references. I wonder how many more games are referenced throughout. Again, despite the lack of extras, this double pack is a solid port of both games, and you get good value for money with having 2 games here. They're great fun to shoot, and as I said with Gunblade NY, LA Machine Guns is also beginner friendly due to having infinite credits. Unlike the other games in this video though, these two are not cheap, with them roughly costing as much as they did brand new, if not more so. So if you want to snap them up, I suggest doing so now before the prices go up further, as these are unlikely to get another release anytime soon, if at all. And if you still aren't convinced, just listen to this menu music. Go on. How cool is that? I'd definitely have that on repeat or as a ringtone on my mobile phone. So there we have it, the Sega Lightgun legacy on the Nintendo Wii. 4 releases, 6 incredible games. Now the beauty of the Wii was, due to it having the infrared sensor, it will work just fine on modern HD TVs, so there's no worry of your Lightgun not working. There are plenty of peripherals on the market, my preference of course being the aforementioned AMS Magnum that came bundled with some editions of House of the Dead Overkill. If you're a Lightgun fan, or a Sega fan, you owe it to yourself to pick these up. Not least because a Wii will also enable you to play GameCube games, so that means any Sega games that are still locked to the GameCube, such as Billy Hatcher or Phantasy Star Online Episode 3 Card Revolution, can also be played. And it's a no-brainer for you to charge your Wiimote, point at the screen and jump into the action. Thank you all for watching, and I hope you've enjoyed listening to me talk and shoot my way through some of Sega's finest.